Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for taking the time to connect to Zoom this morning. We could be doing just about anything with our time, really, probably catching some sleep. I know I could use extra sleep, but you decided to join Zoom, join Creative Mornings San Francisco, and hear me speak. So I am very grateful, and I will do my best to return the favor. I'm going to try to entertain you today. My name is Dairien. I am a designer. The product I'm going to speak about today is called but I'm going to give you a little bit of background. And to do so, the presentation is going to diverge from what you're used to. This is going to be a bit unorthodox. So before I begin, I actually ask that you hold questions until the end. I'm eager to have a dialogue with everyone. I want to hear feedback and comments, but I'd like to get through the presentation first. So you can leave comments or questions into the Zoom chat or use a notepad, and let's definitely talk after. In the before times, we would probably be crammed into a giant room together or a small room, and I'd be on a stage, kind of like this one. Maybe it's in the lobby or an auditorium of a popular tech company. And we get to brush shoulders, possibly bump into an acquaintance that we haven't seen in a while, grab a big plate of food at the breakfast buffet before we try to find a seat with a good view. But all of that, it was in the before times, and times have certainly changed. When's the last time you can remember talking face to face with a stranger without feeling just a little bit nervous? Excuse me, would you be able, could you please cover, ow! I'm glad I escaped that. This is a much better setting, I gotta say. Look, over the past 12 months, we've all had to adapt to a new way of living and working. Some of us are fortunate that we can work wherever we want, like a tropical paradise, or, your living room. And look, it's no sweat if you need to dial in from your bathroom or even the toilet right now. No one really knows. Or maybe you just woke up and you're still in bed. It's cool. I don't judge you. I'd be in bed myself if I was listening in. One thing that I've learned in life is that when challenges arise, so do new opportunities. So instead, today, I'm going to flip everything on its head. I could have done the same boring, tired presentation that we've all seen before. But instead of trying to replicate what we used to do in person and including another boring graph that shows just how, since the pandemic, our productivity is sky high and happiness is tanking, what's the fun in that? I'd rather interrupt your imagination as well as the conversation about what's possible. Okay, I imagine that some of you are still wondering, who is this guy exactly? And why am I still in this Zoom call? Unfortunately, I can't answer those questions very well for you. And I'll save you the long story about how I've been in the industry for almost 15 years and I moved to San Francisco 10 years ago. But I do live in San Francisco, right here in DuBose Triangle, with my dog Bandit. That's Bandit right there. As you can tell, he's unamused. You might have noticed that people seem to be fleeing San Francisco. My suspicion is that many of these people never really planned to stay in San Francisco for very long. They came for a job opportunity. But for me, it was important to build community where I live. And so I'm a high school lacrosse coach at Sacred Heart Cathedral, not too far from where I live. I find that I enjoy life most when I focus on things that energize me and provide a source of inspiration or creativity. So, the last thing that I'll mention about myself is that I recently hosted a podcast series. It's called Culture Fit: Racial Bias in Tech. It's 6 episodes, each about 30 minutes. I was tremendously fortunate to be able to record this series just after the George Floyd protests kicked off through All Turtles, which is the studio that I work for. And it's also the studio that conceived We're going to get to in just a second. But my last thought on Culture Fit is if you listen, and I really hope you do, you can find it on all of the major podcast platforms. And it's an in-depth look at how the tech industry is not only perpetuating institutional racism, but it's also damaging the underrepresented individuals that make up the workforce in the tech industry. Back to the All Turtle Studio and So the All Turtle Studio is unique in a number of ways. We like to describe ourselves as a mission-driven studio that is focused on solving fundamental human problems through products that have simple and direct business models. We're also deeply committed to inclusive and equitable entrepreneurship. At one point, we had physical locations in Soma District, San Francisco, in Tokyo, Japan, and Paris, France. We are still worldwide. We are still distributed, but we no longer have physical locations. This is actually the office that we used to be in. You can see my partner Gabe, who I still design with at on my right shoulder, and you can actually see me right here on my left shoulder. We both used to have long hair. We don't anymore. What does it mean to be a mission-driven studio? And how does our studio determine where to prioritize our efforts, particularly when our goal is to drive meaningful impact? Well, here are just a few of the studio companies that we work on at All Turtles. And what you'll find is that many of the companies fall under categories like health, wellness, education, or the future of work. These are all products that we feel deserve to not only be in the world, but will drive meaningful change. Exciting products like TELUS, which is radically improving elder care by providing non-invasive sensors to help predict and analyze health outcomes for our most vulnerable population. Or Spot, which provides customized chatbots so people in the workplace can feel safe when they need to complain or report an incident. Or one of my favorite projects from out of the studio, Sift. We call it news therapy. Think of it as the intersection of education and challenging your bias. And a really great company that we partnered with in Carrot, which provides state-of-the-art fertility packages for couples looking to have their first child. What all of these studio companies have in common is that they are, again, trying to solve meaningful problems while simultaneously leveraging newly available technologies, building concepts, ideas that really weren't possible just a year or two ago. And so another concept that I'd like to leave you with is that at the core of how our studio works is a willingness to always diverge our product thinking and to find the best possible solution to the challenges that our world faces. Think of All Turtles like a media studio, akin to Netflix, right? Netflix very quickly ballooned into the world's biggest production studio. They have tons of talent, constantly spinning up new movies and TV shows. But Netflix won't fail because one show doesn't get renewed for another season. Even if for some reason Netflix production fails miserably, well, the talent that was responsible for that production isn't without a job. They simply get funneled back into the studio. All of that is a long-winded way of explaining why we were in the right place at the right time to build. We were starting to notice a trend at the studio, even before the pandemic. It was a rise in distributed teams. We were distributed ourselves, but we noticed even abroad, more and more teams were not required to be in one particular location. And so what that separation means is that where I call home, where I choose to live, no longer has to be tied to where my employer is located. And with those two things separate, they can be meaningfully better. Think about it. I can work from anywhere, like the pastures of Wyoming, still wearing my boxers or pajamas if I want. For those of us that are fortunate enough to work on a distributed team, life can become meaningfully better. Is our solution. We saw it as an opportunity. Now that we've diverged from the status quo, both of those things, work and where you live, can be meaningfully better. And so is the tool that's going to provide that by not just recreating what we used to do in the real world, but taking it to a whole new level. If you haven't caught on already, this entire presentation was made with and some of it was pre-recorded. Could you tell which parts? Kind of crazy concept, right? Mixing live with not live. Anyway, you might still be wondering what is exactly. I'm going to let Phil Libin, our CEO, give a few words.
Well, what is for? What do you do in the product? We thought about this a lot, and we decided that is not for communicating or collaborating. It's not where your team gets together to get work done. There's many other amazing products that already do that. Is for performing. It's for that time every day where you say, okay, attention on me, I'm going to do a bit. And I think all of us do this all the time. You know, Nike used to have this slogan, everyone's an athlete. And I was always like, I'm not. We think everyone's a performer. Everyone multiple times a day has these micro performances, sometimes not very micro, where, you know, maybe you're performing for your coworkers, or maybe for your kids, or maybe for your investors or your boss or your social media followers, but you are performing. And elevates that performance. It makes it better. And we all need the help, because right now, since we're all living on video, it's so easy to feel like an anonymous head in a box. So is for performing, but the word itself, the sound, is really easy for anyone to say without thinking about it. Most people say it multiple times in every conversation, unintentionally, right? You just hear it all the time. It's easy to say the world over unintentionally. But when you say it intentionally, when you try to say it intentionally, even I have to pause for half a second and consider, how am I going to say it? Which syllable am I going to inflect? I have to pause for half a second. I have to take a deep breath. I have to smile, and then I say the name. It's like every time you say the name intentionally, it's like a little performance. And so the product is for performing.
Okay, that was beautiful. Thank you, Phil. One thing you hear often in the product world is the idea of luck. Oh, that company, they just got lucky. Or that product founder's lucky. I'm not so sure how much I subscribe to luck. I'm sure it exists. But what I do subscribe to is the idea that when opportunity meets preparation, that's when luck strikes. And so for us with we were prepared, we were experienced, the opportunity arose, and we've seen rapid success for the product. Okay, so like I said, with everyone is a performer. And again, I want to thank the Creative Mornings audience for joining me today. is available for Mac OS, and we also have a beta client that we're working on for Windows that you should check out if you haven't already. We released a major update for Mac OS yesterday. It was including quite a few features that I've demoed today, like the slides that I get to transition through, and presets, which allow me to jump into different modes that you saw throughout the presentation. And additionally, we added slide importing. So if you have a keynote or a PowerPoint presentation or some other type of presentation you've used in the past, you can import it directly into and start creating and performing the way that you want to perform. We also introduced some pretty fun features like magnifying glass, which I'll show you right here. You can see I can zoom into things, or I can have a big mouth. And what we call this product is Fuseful. We think it's the perfect marriage of fun and useful. You can obviously see the power of being able to present to people, being able to mix live and recorded content like I've done today. But more importantly, like for teachers or certain professions where you're constantly having to perform and keep the audience engaged, this tool really gives you the power to create whatever your mind can come up with. So again, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and I'd love to open it up to questions, comments, or feedback.